They've been getting me with online advertising lately. Do they ever get you with the online advertising? They're getting really good at it. They know us, right? This blurring of our public and private lives that our social media world has made. And this public and private life, that's what I want to try and talk about a little bit today. But the blurring online has gotten to the point that they know exactly what I want. The latest one, they've figured out just who I am, and I'm not a poster. But they're watching what I look at, and I don't know how it works, but they know me because they know to advertise over and over again this group therapy experience in a role-playing game setting, and I haven't signed up, not yet. But I think a lot about this question of my private life as a minister and my public life as a minister, and trying to close the gap there as much as possible without giving up the idea that we are, each of us, entitled to a private life, no matter how public our role. And it's a dilemma sometimes, because I want to tell you about what's on my heart and what's happening in my life. And I do, as you might have noticed, tell a lot of stories about myself. And yet I don't want this to be about me. So the dilemma this month was whether to talk about, it's the anniversary of, and so you can see I'm doing it, but I want you to know it was a dilemma. It's the anniversary of my best friend's death, the first anniversary of his death this month. And so he's very present on my mind and was very present in preparing for this sermon, because I, more than anything in the world, wanted to talk to him about what to say about superheroes, because he was a true believer. The last few years of his life, in his tiny little North Berkeley studio apartment, he had half the living space filled up with this shelving unit that had his comic book collection after he'd finally moved it out from New York. And he couldn't quite do what he always said he was going to do, of cull it and just keep the most precious to him and sell the rest. And instead, he just lived with this enormous... None of us could go over to his house because there was nowhere to be except where this comic book collection was. I couldn't talk to Jared, so I read a book about the history of Superman instead, and I'll tell you in a minute what I learned. But I think that ministers do have this challenge of figuring out how to be an authentic public self while maintaining a private self as well. I found it really challenging when I was getting ready to speak at his memorial service, because, of course, speaking at memorial service is what I do for a living. And yet, for Jared's memorial, I didn't want to be in my professional ministerial capacity. I just wanted to be a mourner. It was hard to find that in-between place. They say the adage is ministers should preach from your scars, not from your wounds, which is a beautiful turn of phrase, but I still, it doesn't resolve my dilemma, because I worry if we never talk about our wounds in public, how will we know how to be together in our woundedness? So ministers have this dilemma, but I think all of us do, no matter what your level of public life is. Certainly, it's been on my mind, Taylor Swift. I don't know if you've heard of her. I know almost nothing about her, except that I can't help but know a few things about her. So public is her life. She's dating somebody. I don't even have his whole name quite. Kelsey something Kelsey something. Travis, thank you. Travis Kelsey, yes, and he's participating in this large sporting event this afternoon, and she's going to, right, we know this, there's a story we're all privy to, and she's 30 years old, and she has this life, this public life in which she has carefully crafted this image of a very good, wholesome person. And I do worry about those parts, like we were talking about a couple weeks ago, the people on her bus who don't fit that narrative, and the cost of living such a public life. Okay, so superheroes. Superheroes who face this dilemma, of course. The public life of a superhero and the private alias that tries to protect them. There comes the moment in every story, and it's the moment that happens, over and over again with Lois Lane and Clark Kent and Superman. Their love triangle, where Lois loves Superman and couldn't care less about this Clark Kent nerd. And of course, they're one and the same, but it's this saga, and you're watching it, and it's the same thing that happens when you're watching Peter Parker and his Aunt May, and he's keeping this whole after-school fighting crime life from the only grown-up he's got left. And in either one, and over and over in these superhero stories, you just want them to tell the person who they love the most, their closest loved ones, you want them to let them know the truth, to be seen and be held in their wholeness. And as the audience, you know that would be the right thing to do, but of course, whenever it does, and it does occasionally, and all sorts of weird things happen, but when it does, it turns out that what the superhero knew all along is true, that if their identity is revealed to anyone, it's the people who are closest to them, the ones they love the most, who will be in danger. How do we live with our true selves, our vulnerability, with those that we love the most without putting them in danger? It's not true of all superheroes, and I don't know if you have been tuning in to our pantheon of superheroes, but we've got a serious pantheon of superheroes these days. I think there's something in us that craves it. I think we lost our pantheons of gods. We descendants of Protestants let go of the saints. And as soon as Nietzsche declared God is dead, we've got these modern saints, these modern gods, our superheroes who come in to fill the void. And so every corner of the culture pops up their superheroes, and they don't all struggle with this same identity thing. Have you seen Black Panther, the movie, or a little bit about Black Panther? The superhero who comes out of the Black Panthers, came originally published in the 60s, and who doesn't have a secret identity, though he does wear a mask. He's known to his people. All his people lift him up as a leader. It's a title, it's a role that he has. And instead, his whole civilization, Wakanda, this advanced civilization in the heart of Africa, has to shield itself, mask itself from the rest of the world so that it's not exploited, taken for its advanced technology and resources. I actually think that every superhero, whether it's Black Panther or Superman or Spider-Man, they come out of this need for a story of some kind of liberation. And the Superman story, you might not know this. Did you know that Superman is actually Jewish? He was conceived of by a couple of Jewish immigrants, sons of families who had come over, and he was created in the 1930s as the rise of anti-Semitism was taken over the whole world. Conceived of as this alter ego for these two nerdy illustrators, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. And that was the less Jewish version of their names. And And do you know his birth name? You know, on all the way on planet Krypton? Kal-El, yeah, Kal-El. Right? He's this godly being, this one who is sent like Moses down a long journey away from his parents to save his life while the planet Krypton is going to be destroyed. He grows into the powers of Samson and shakes down the world. And so he becomes, through his adoption as an American icon, this hero combating ultimately anti-Semitism as well as many other social issues. He takes on the Ku Klux Klan at one point. Right? Though he now can read as such a figure of the patriarchy, of that waspy man, it was all just a disguise. Really, he was this young Jewish man all along. One of the newest superheroes in the pantheon, it's Ms. Marvel. You know Ms. Marvel? Ms. Marvel, she's Pakistani-American. She lives in Jersey. And she's a teenager, and her name is Kamala Khan. She's Muslim, and the beginning of her story, of course, is wrestling with this question of identity, both within her family and to the outer world. There's a moment where she has this kind of classic coming out moment to her families all gathered around in the living room. But she's already kind of let the news slip to her mom that she's a superhero. So when she announces it to everyone, they all act surprised. But very quickly it's revealed that gossip had spread among the family. Isn't it often the case that we are the last to know that our own mask is off, that we're seen? And then the real challenge for her is, who is she going to be as a superhero? Her powers give her this ability to change her form, appearance, and at first she wants nothing more than to be the other Marvel, Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, the buxom blonde, everyone's idea of a superhero. But instead, she realizes after one of her friends says, "We need you to be our superhero. We need you to be the superhero for our community," that she might be able to be a superhero just as herself. What we are asked to do in taking off the mask is not to run around naked all the time. Although, like Aya suggested last week, occasionally sitting in front of the mirror and really loving, accepting just the way you are, that sounds good. But to choose when to take off the mask and when to keep it on in service of something greater. Because what these superheroes have in common, and what all of us, I think, have in common, is that a strong public life must be rooted in a private life that is held in love and respect by a community that understands us. That's what allows us to know when to make the choice of when to reveal and when to keep hidden. It's what allows us to make the choice, like the snake in Heaven's story earlier, about whether it's time to shed the skin, be raw and vulnerable out to the spring that is awakening, or whether it's winter still and that extra layer is needed to stay on. It was one of the qualities of my relationship with Jared that I miss most. He was someone who saw parts of me, who could play and laugh with my anger and my cynicism, who could make the darkest jokes together, so that I knew that even though you're never going to see some of those parts here, even though there are parts of me that will never have full voice in my public life, that they are witnessed, loved, and belong. May every one of us find that we can root our public life in a community that holds our private life with respect and care, that we are witnessed in the fullness of our being in some place, so that we can flame on, so that we can do what is ours to do, so that the gifts that are there in our vulnerability, that were there in whatever our origin stories of wounding are, may be expressed in a world that so badly needs them. May it be so, and amen.